sincerely apologized. So I was roped in this morning to replace him to play this role. So if I am doing anything wrong, please forgive me, because this is a role that I came to Uganda unaware that I will execute. So I hope to do my best. All right, so in the program, we have 4 presentations that are going to be tabled this morning. I just want to check if there are people in the room. One, Daniel Mlambo from Tswana University of Technology, is he in the room? No. Is he online? No. I only see 3 people online. Esther, Neil, and Joe. So he's not online. So speaker 1, unfortunately, is not in the room. So that presentation will fall off. 2, Judith Sikala. Judith Sikala from the University of the Free State. Are you in the room? No. Online? Dololo. Esther Martins. Hallelujah. You are with us. Then Ibrahim Hakan Karatas and Pamela Atukundire. You are in the room. Lovely. Then it means, colleagues, we are going to have only 2 presentations, therefore, for this session, which is good news, because at least we'll break off early and get to go have a nice time outside. So, I have been told that speakers must speak for 15 minutes minimum, 20 maximum. So Esther Martins from the Inkscape Design Education, please come forward and present your paper titled The Role of Private Higher Education Institutions in Advancing the Ideal Afrocentric University in South Africa. Colleagues and comrades, Esther.
Thank you, Dr. Pedro. So as was shared, my name is Esther Martins. I am Dean of the Built Environment Faculty at Inkscape Education Group, which is a private higher education institution in South Africa. And we teach from a number of disciplines in the creative industries. So your graphics design, your interiors, so really more the creative visual arts aligned programs. I'm just going to set up my presentation quickly so that we can get started. No, I don't want to share my screen. I want to share that. Right. Go into presentation mode. From my end, I just want to see my presenter view. You can still see perfect. So yeah, so as shared, Esther Martins. And I think this is more of a pilot study and a critical review really at the beginning. So if anything, I'm really looking forward to engaging in a discussion, a conversation, a critical looking in of what it is that we as institutions broadly, as the university, you know, the royal we, and then also as separate institutions, how we do and how we perpetuate in the visual images. And I think it's quite relevant in the sense that Prof. Dina and Kerwin and what they shared about, you know, visually, how do we project ourselves, this image making that we do. So it started exploring Afrocentricity in private design higher education institutions, and these are specifically in South Africa. I looked at 3 specifically because I've really been quite grappling because I'm at the beginning of some studies and I'm trying to grapple with this current production of interior design that we have at our institution, which is a program that falls under my faculty, and how it's sort of sitting in a very Western, the pedagogies are quite Western, the way we teach, the way we ask students to engage with it. And I don't mean just for our institution, but broadly. It's really, as the quote says, it's quite physically located, and to steal from Mr. Ndlovu Gatsheni, or Doctor, is, you know, it's located physically on the continent. but very epistemologically, let me get that word right, epistemologically situated in Europe and America. So how do we now start grappling with producing interior design artifacts, products, spaces that speak to our context, rather than producing these spaces that speak of Europe, that speak of the Americas and that? So that's my kind of the critical reflections I'm having. So the institutional context, the study of the context of the study is private higher educations. In South Africa, it's 3 of them, which are really quite well known. So historically, the institutions would have full-time staff, but you have part-time staff who are located in industry. So they may not be grappling with decoloniality. They might not be grappling with internationalization or whatever it is as an institution you might be grappling with, or sustainability or whatever it might be. So how do we make sure that these industry professionals are coming into the space and actually engaging as if they were full-time and still buying into what the institution is about? So the institutions are really quite driven with mission and vision. So it's a very mission, vision kind of perspective. And it's also it might be perceived, let me say, as being very, industrial, like you need to get students, you need to get bums on seats. So it might be perceived as a more of a commercial endeavor. And it's striking that balance about doing good in the greater university. But as you as an institution, are you doing that by trying to get buy-in constantly from people? So the curriculum alignment is really very closely tied to industry. And this feedback loop from students, from lecturers, is through moderation and subject reports. So all of that is covered. We're all governed by the CHE, which is the Council of Higher Education in South Africa. We subscribe and we do all of the things. So very legible, credible, and all of that. But that student voice, which we hear from, they review their lectures. So our students are actually engaging in saying, these are the situations that happen in our classes. I'm not sure if you've heard or if you've not, and you kind of rate or review, not rate per se, but you review lecture and you also review the program. So there's some voice that comes through. And besides that, there's the SRCs, and so the student voice is heard. They sit on the academic committee. So a student representative sits on our academic committee to hold us responsible and to bring in the student voice into the committee. The demographic is predominantly white, whether it's lecturers or students, but this is growing. And I think that for me is quite concerning, is that, well, it's great. It's a good problem to have, that the body of students is getting more diverse, but the way we engage, the way we teach, who is in the class might not be growing as diversely as possible. And that's a challenge that we have to endeavor on. So background of the study, it's for multi-campus institutions. So these, for instance, at Inscape, we have 5 campuses, sorry. Those are located in Johannesburg, in Pretoria, in Cape Town, Stellenbosch, and Durban. And then the other institutions also have, sorry, I think somebody keeps moving my slide online. The other institutions also have our multi-campus institutions. So what happens with a multi-campus institution is you almost have the courseware, which is the content and what is taught in the class, centrally located. So for instance, the interior design curriculum sits with me and the buck stops with me. So the QAing, the making sure that we're, integrating decoloniality, sustainability, circularity, all of that sits with me. And if I don't check on that, then that falls on the wayside. So one of my concerns and one of my critiques about centralizing the curriculum and having lecturers who may not have as much agency or may feel like they don't have as much agency is how do I know that if I leave the seat and somebody comes and, takes on the role, how do I make sure, well, how do I know that they will also be able to continue what is, as an institution, what we're passionate, what we're willing to do, what we're, designing to do. So the focus is on design and education and teaching in an interior design program. And then the one key thing is that I just reviewed Instagram accounts. So I looked at social media and how these institutions are actually presenting and representing themselves through social media. Because there's messaging, and I think Dina spoke quite in depth with it, and I wouldn't do it justice, in how and there's value in how we as institutions, as people, we do it personally, but as institutions, If you look at what is on Twitter, what is on Instagram, what is on Facebook, it speaks to something that the institution or the message the institution wants to put forward. So I won't go too at length with the methodology, but it was really just a social media analysis looking at 3 design institutions, this being Greenside Design College, Inscape Education Group, which is the institution I'm at, and then also at Vega. So the selection of data looked at social media posts just in this year from January to October 2024. And then this allowed me to identify some key themes that as the conference was going, I think I went and tweaked some of the themes. But these Afrocentric themes are really about the decolonized knowledge and African relevance, Pan-Africanism and global connectivity, cultural and linguistic integration, inclusivity, social justice, empowerment, so all of these things that are about the Afrocentric ideal university and then institution for us. So just a proviso, as an institution in South Africa, we can't call ourselves, as a private institution, we can't call ourselves a university. So that's why I'll keep referring to institution. And that's legislated, so that's beyond me. And then with that, I looked at creating that criteria, and it will be a bit more visual once I get to speaking about the data, is creating an alignment scoring. So for each post, I asked the tech to kind of rate, is it low alignment or is it high alignment? So low being minimal or no connection to the theme of Afrocentricity or the Afrocentric ideal university, and then the high alignment being a very strong and explicit connection. And this looked at more at a qualitative analysis. Again, please poke holes. It's a very much in the beginning stages of a pilot study. And then looking at the trends and that identification of what's happening, what are the overarching trends, and then doing a bit of a very high level comparison. And I think in that comparison, I want to say that I'm not grandstanding and saying we are doing better or they are doing better, but just to be, what are the key themes and trends that are happening? So why social media? And I think I shared it briefly. It's a real-time reflection of what the institutional identity is. It looks at the public engagement and the visibility. What do they want to be seen to be visibly doing? Sorry. So looking at cultural signaling through the visuals and aesthetics. So is there diversity in who's represented in their posts? How are those people represented? Which is something that I found quite interesting, and I'll share more on it. And then looking at institutional priorities, because the social media speaks to that as well. So, and the use of African languages, what languages are they using? Are they using any African languages, or is it just strictly English in a context that is so multilingual that, and I don't know if you're familiar with a brand like Nando's that uses very much, very quirky, very multilingual. So how do you, as an institution, say, actually, no, I'm just going to speak English and that's it? So some explorations, and this was looking at Greenside specifically. So they're very much sitting in the middle. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I have a few minutes to go. They're kind of sitting in the middle, not really doing too badly, not doing exceedingly well. So there's good focus. There's, African art is represented. There's global partnerships, but the African ties are not there. So for some reason, there's almost like we're skipping over Africa and we're going to go into the next, the global north, which is also, something we can critique. So looking at Vega, again, similar numbers. It's very African cultural elements are displayed, posts about African-inspired content. So, I mean, every social media account in South Africa on Heritage Day will post a heritage post. So at least you have one. At least there's one post and you can get a one. But how much deeper are you engaging with that? The emphasis on inclusivity and addressing social inequalities. So there's a lot of community engagement that they're doing. Because you might be working with an industry partner who's willing to fund and say, I'll put money towards this children's home or through, this whatever modality you might want to take in engaging with the community. And then Inscape, again, similar numbers. There's a bit more consistent community engagement, inclusive social justice themes. There's touches on sustainability, and there's good engagement with the African context. But again, African languages could be integrated a bit more. It's more focused on a global setting and not so much with reaching out and connecting with African institutions. So coming towards the end of it, some trends that came out is that the global engagement is a priority, but African leadership not so much. Looking at the African language integration, and I'll speak broadly African because we do have some international students that come and study with us. Inclusivity and social justice, yes, it's very much at the core. We're looking at impact. We're looking at, how do we engage with our communities, those in person and online. But the ecological stewardship, which is, really considering sustainability and circular economy needs to be a bit more Afrocentrically aligned. Decolonized knowledge is mentioned, but is it integrated in the curriculum? Because I think social media is such a it becomes a grandstanding of what is in your curriculum. Or some institutions refuse to. They refuse to engage because, you'd rather show about who received a PhD, who's done this, who's published that, but you're not speaking about what's happening in the classroom. You're not showing about what's happening within the institution. So something that was interesting to see was cultural representation. And for me, this was really something that hit home because I can see it in our social media. And I was really quite interested in doing this because we have started and we've been named a product cluster, which is the academic team. I've started engaging with the marketing about how do we market our product. How do we market what we teach? How do we market? So it becomes a very, you're showing. And that cultural representation, it's quite interesting in a different institution, and I won't name them. There was a video of girls dancing together. And anytime there's a video of anybody dancing, there's Black girls dancing with. And I thought that was such an interesting act to do, that positioning almost used as props for these girls who might have a bit more rhythm. But there is somebody white dancing quite in the center of the frame. It was really interesting to see when Black people and Black bodies are shown. So something that I've been, and I mean, if you're studying decoloniality, you start with Global Gacheni. He speaks about the empire and how, yes, physically colonialism did something, but I think it's also in that mental, that coloniality did something in our minds as well. And he speaks about epistemicide, where you kill and displace pre-existing knowledges. Linguicide, where you're killing and displacing the languages of a people and opposing your own, and culturecide, where you kill and replace the cultures of a people. So I think for me, social media becomes important because what are we doing through what we show, what we click, post, and it's published? What are we killing? What are we praising? What are we grandstanding for? So Prof. Dina spoke about representation and that there's these cracks of representation, which I agree that, the cracks is where the light gets in, as Cohen posted. But it is not an end to a means, it is just the beginning for me. And I think cultural representation is just the beginning, and we need, as private institutions, to just dig a bit deeper about how we represent, about how we present, and what it means when we present and share and speak and talk about something. So those are my sort of high-level thoughts. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Well done. That was brilliant. We have time. Colleagues, I want to take it straight to the floor. Any questions, comments, or thoughts that you might have from the presentation that Esther has tabled for us this morning? Maybe I should go first. Do you think decolonization is becoming a commodity? Because decolonization arrived in universities from struggles, and it was intended to dismantle the existing neo-colonial order that we find, of which, as you said, the colonial order is about epistemicide. So you are killing people's cultures, knowledges, and languages. So coloniality is a murderous regime. It's a regime of genocide against those who are regarded as subhuman in the colonial hierarchy of human beings. So decolonization is a serious struggle to dismantle that. But now, is decolonization still that struggle, or now has it been turned into a commodity for universities to brand with and marketize and advertise and play these neoliberal games? I'm just beginning the conversation, my friend. Yeah.
I like the notion of neoliberal games. I do think it has become a commodity of sorts. If we look at fashion, for instance, and I'm speaking out of my design discipline here, but if we look at fashion and how that in itself, everything is now decolonized. I'm now using fabrics that are local from the context, or I'm doing but I'm selling it. So, and I think we always, if you look at who is selling and who is pushing the decolonized agenda, especially when it's commodified, I think you will find it very interesting to know that it might not be the community, it might not be the context. So one of my other hobbies is finding out who owns brands or interior design companies that are doing work within Africa. So the lodges that pop up, the hotels that pop up, is it local designers that they're using? Is it local makers that they're using? Or are you importing something from everywhere else but here? And I think when we start making money and extracting from contexts in a way that is very colonial, yeah, I have big concerns and big worries about that. So I think it definitely is, and it can be, because if you are trying to reach a certain student, but you're advertising for that certain student because, we decolonize, but you go into the curriculum, it's just, you've added some Black authors to your reading list. And it's not actually in the way we teach, in the way we engage students, in how their knowledge is also valued in the classroom. Yeah, so there, the lack of depth becomes apparent.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Kaimba Paul. I'm a PhD student from College of Education. You talked about the comparison between the cultural representation and linguistic integration. In the Western world, they have an advantage whereby they have what we call the dialects. Then for us here, we have a challenge, or we have various or a diversity of languages. And you find that what I speak may be far different from someone from the central region. So how are you able to cater for that kind of diversity as far as language is concerned? Then the other issue is on globalization, whereby we have an exchange of culture as a result of technology. When you talk of social media, we're looking at technology automatically, which is bringing a lot of exchange of cultures, especially from the Western world. How have you been able to understand the effect of globalization on trying to understand how social media is giving you a picture of decolonization? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I am Ayanda Simai, doctor, let me say so, from Nelson Mandela University. Esther, is a very thought-provoking presentation. It's not my field, it's interior design. And you are taking this particular study in a private institution, the most unfriendly teaching environment in South Africa. Let me just say so. You are so brave, let me say so. Just for those who perhaps don't know, I'll just give a short one sentence a preview to say that when it comes to universities which are controlled by the Department of Higher Education and Training, we have much more laxity to do how we feel like we may be restrained perhaps by the policies of a particular university, but they all ascribe to the national principles set by DHET. But when it comes to IEB, institutions and the private ones, they're owned by the rich white capitalists. Let me just say so straight. So to bring in decolonization in their curriculum is not easy. However, I want to say it's not a question for me, it's a comment to say that we see how much graphics and interior design has transformed a bit, because you go to hotels, you see nice artifacts of an African nature, but when you look at the person doing the design, it's a white person. So which means that something is wrong, because when it comes to our universities, the most lecturers, highest number of lecturers in that field that you are in, they're still white, but they still you see what I'm wearing here, the beads that I'm wearing here, they will take a photograph of this, go and manufacture it, and go and visit our villages, see these nice things that we have there, which are traditional, then approach the community members where they give them, it's cheap labor, just give them a little bit of money. So it translates to decor, which is not in your curriculum. What you're doing in your case, you're trying to put the African content in the context of what you're teaching in the classroom, which is a very difficult like activity, or what do I call it? It's a project. Even activity is just one thing, not an event, it's a project, but it needs the support of us. And it's something you can't do it alone, definitely. So you need the support also of your colleagues of the other color, because they like what they see as decolonized, but they don't want to do the actual work that you're doing. Thank you for this. I was listening to this with interest. Just for the sake of our colleagues who are here, we are all African, but the context in which we come from, they're so different. And for us in South Africa, we are the majority, as Black as we are, with our different nationalities, but we're still, though we are free, we are not really free, because we're still controlled by capital, which is majorly owned by the white, the situation that we are in. Thank you very much.
Maybe engage with two, and then the final round will be the last two hands of the ball.
If I may, I think respond. The struggle, it definitely continues. I think I'm grateful that the community of educators I work with are really quite supportive. But I have to say, I think anytime I know where to speak decoloniality or to mention decolonization, because in some rooms people just, like, and you can see people's shoulders. And sometimes I just get cheeky and I say it anyway. Or, for instance, I was in a meeting the one time and somebody didn't want to use the word transformation. And I was just like, transformation, but that's basics, So yeah, navigating that landscape to get in and then to make change is really something else. And I think, yeah, I'm always encouraged by somebody like Pedro, who's just like, stuff you, I'm going to mention and I'm going to say, and I'm going to shake the table and I'm going to flip it, and, and you move along. So I'm always encouraged, and I think that's why coming to this conference is always so key for me, because I'm like, everyone is struggling, but some are braver, and the bravery encourages me. And to your point about languages, I think it is such a challenge. People in the linguistics department are still struggling about integrating multiple languages, teaching in a multilingual way. I think we can get so stuck in, oh, it's so difficult, I can't do anything, that you don't do anything. And I think I always remind myself that inaction in itself is an action. That if we don't start, if we don't do something, then what are you doing? You're showing that I'm not going to do anything. That is in itself an action. And on globalization, I think the endeavor to kind of grandstand or show the West what we're doing, I think can be done in a way that just diminishes what it is that we're doing, that we're almost saying that we are legible, we are credible, that what we're doing is a good thing, that what we're doing is very, so in how we do and make and show ourselves, I think that's so key to consider which audience are you trying to speak to, and because there's always an audience. And so in that, what is the messaging? Are you actually speaking to the students, or are you speaking to industry partners, or are you speaking to the global West, North? So yeah, it's always such a challenge and a fine balance.
Thank you. My name is Koka Serusu, a PhD student here at Makerere University. I appreciate your presentation, very informative. For clarity, we are here in Uganda. The greatest contributors of education here are Catholics, followed by Anglicans and Islam. We are coming from that background. And when they came, remember, these are all Europeans and Arabs. When they came, they taught us the way of living and behavior, the dress code, and they colonized us. Now, they established schools, and those schools or those institutions became mission-centered, preach their faith. And when we got into those schools, we were indoctrinated. And that informed our homes, where we come from, that a child is born, has to go to a church. And that child was taught informally from the church. And this is the Europeans. And that informed our way of life throughout the university. Yes, we are concentrating on higher education. These very people are the great contributors of higher education here in Uganda setting. I have been thinking a lot. When we talk about this decolonization, we are only looking at one segment of education. But we forget there are other segments in the names of religion. And actually in Uganda setting here, religion is the biggest segment because it even gave birth to education. My only worry inside my heart, just we are preaching this gospel of Afrocentrism, how far will we go? Because already our minds have been either polluted positively or negatively. I have a thinking in conclusion. I agree there are some practices and values within Africa that I don't agree with. And there are other practices outside there that can shape us. I would suggest blend in all spheres of life, be it politically, be it education, we just blend and see which one befits us, and we move on. I submit.
Okay. Thank you also for your well-designed research. And I wonder some details about your research. If I missed something, sorry. These Instagram accounts are official university accounts or students official? And the second question is, the ratio of international students of those universities, do you have an idea? Or maybe about the white and blank students ratios of these universities? And the third one, do you think there is an impact of social economical status of students of your research conclusions? Thank you.
The last one.
Thank you so much. I'm very privileged to push this very information that I'd like to air out. From the very onset, I've been asking a question that what are we Africans missing something out? Are we missing something out as Africans? Why am I asking that question? Exploring Afrocentricity in private schools, when I heard about it, and looking at the practical experiences in our countries, in our world, I felt like as Africans, we are missing out something that doesn't help us to move to the level that we want. A lot of lamentations, but way forwards seem to be lacking in our analysis of realities of our lives. Because from the time I attended probably my primary, we've always talked about colonial and so forth and so forth. But what is it that is keeping us behind? Today, I just imagined that I was this student in higher education trying to pursue my studies in business or entrepreneurship, accounts and banking. But outside in the market, you find that dollar is ruling almost the whole world. When I go to just Kenya, I can't find Ugandan shillings being used there. I go to Congo, I can't even find Ugandan shillings. We are all dollar, euro, what? But what is it that is keeping us Africans behind? If we can't transcend those issues of dollars, euros, what, call them, it becomes very challenging for us to advance a step in the higher education. And besides these children that we send to school, some of them even they mimic fellow Africans. You look at this one, she looks like an you know. So what is wrong with us Africans that our education from the grassroots is not molding us to appreciate, to bring out the African? And lastly, dollar or gold is found in our own countries. Uganda is having a massive layer of wealth. The same with Congo, but go to Congo. This is a place where they are still putting roadblocks. People are just, thinking only about what is wrong. we as scholars, can we challenge ourselves to come with something that can break that ice of ignorance that keeps us lamenting than to cherish the wealth that Africa has? It's not about doing away with European, but can we use our wealth productively and transformatively? I submit.
Thank you. Thank you. If I may answer briefly. I'll just briefly, I think to speak about the indoctrination, and maybe it connects with yours, sister, is that the indoctrination starts at home, and how we speak about our countries, how we speak about our communities, how we speak about what it is that we do, we make, we think, sits in our mindsets, and that builds, and we continue to build on that. So I think we have to be careful what it is we're listening to, we're thinking about. As we spoke about at the keynote, critically engage with stuff and not just take it as be and as truth because my pastor said so or because my teacher said so. But do you actually ask your teacher where they got it? Do you ask your lecturer, your supervisor? Is there agency to push back? So those kinds of things. So, and I think that again in a cultural context, in South Africa might look different, in Uganda it might look different, in Ghana it looked a bit different. So how do we navigate all of those things? And to your comment about the racial makeup of the private higher education institutions, we do have an idea. They do annual reports, so they do all the documentation and it's available. But the class makeup is shifting. So it's not to say that every Black student is not able to afford. Some Black students are able to. They're a bit more, and I loosely use this word, privileged and financially privileged and are able to afford. But I think that it still comes to the fore when you cannot engage a Black student in the class when they're trying to engage with you about something from their context and you don't even want to engage in it, or you send them off to another lecturer who's Black. I think for me, that's quite concerning. So yeah, but thank you so much for all the engagement. I think I'll wrap up there for the next presenter.
Well done, Esther. Let's give a round of applause. Brilliant, brilliant, Esther. Well done. Without wasting any time, let me call in Pamela and Ibrahim to present on the internationalization at Makerere University, balancing global engagement with the Afrocentric vision.
Thank you very much. It's my sincere feelings. I'm really happy to be here, to study, to research here at Makerere and to be at this conference, which is very strongly related with my research topic. I came here to understand the educational relation between Turkey and Uganda, especially internationalization of higher education in terms of relation between Turkey and Uganda. And when I came here, I understand it's not only the internationalization of higher education, what we need to discuss here. The first term, which is the main topic of this conference, is decolonization, and also regionalization and globalization. And another point is the nationalization, actually. How can we use the higher education for our national development? So these are all questions in my mind, and I'm trying to understand. So it's just a small part of my research. What will I present today to you. So it's only my learning process as well, because it's my passion to be here and to understand what's happening other side of the world, from north to south. So I'm happy, I'm interestingly and impressively learning a lot. I just try to understand how capacity of Makerere University about internationalization. So try to understand this. I first checked the strategic plan of Makerere University from 2020 to 2025. It's the last strategic plan. I will also continue with my research by talking with the academic staff and students and the public and the business representatives, etc. But today I will only present you the strategic plan, how internationalization and Africanization balanced in the strategic plan of Africa. Actually, the conclusions, the findings very surprised me. Hope you will also be surprised. Okay, is it? Okay. Sorry. This is, and yes, you can, both you can send it like this. Sorry. Okay. Before that, before the methodology part, let me explain why I try to understand as a theoretical framework. You know, I count 5 different terms, internationalization. Actually, internationalization mostly related to take a university to the international standards via their curriculum revisions or student academic mobility to make stronger university's capacity, or making some international joint projects, research collaborations, or cooperations with other universities. This is related to standards accreditation globally. The second, the globalization. Actually, let me come globalization at the last part. The regionalization is a reality of Makerere and Uganda, because there are some political organizations and regulations between countries, and they mandatory for the countries. So they need to regulate their own flow of institutions according to those regulations. African Union Agenda, East African Vision, etc. These have regulations as well. Also, Inter-Council of East African Universities organization also mandates something for the universities. So regionalization is also here very important aspect of internationalization of Ugandan universities, specifically Makerere University. And when we come to globalization, globalization mostly about the commodity, the trade, the flowing of money, products, and some other things all over the world, especially after 80s. And also Uganda is a part of this global game. So they need to be a part of this, or an actor of this globalization. And nationalization is our own purpose to develop as a nation and to get a good place in a global ranking. So it's not to talk too much on it. But when we come to Africanization, Africanization in this conference, it is defined a lot of times. So I will not repeat them, but the philosophy of African philosophy, African experiences, African values, cultures, etc. They talked a lot, and the keynote speakers defined it so clear. So I don't want to add, I cannot add anything more to Africanization, but it's also new vision, new, actually not new, after the colonization process is a kind of way to build the Africa again, but it's also in last 10 years, very often used as a topic in research, and they try to understand how higher education move via through Africanization and make the better solutions, and you did it. Okay, I'm so sorry. How can your computer can be? No. Yes, you can use it. Okay. You did it. You cannot, right? Okay. I'm so sorry. I came here for the second session room, and I download there, but here I'm surprised. Sorry. When I look at, let me come to methodology part. I use the qualitative research methods, and I only use the strategic plan statements to understand what Makerere's vision about internationalism and Africanization. When I look at the internationalization statements in the strategic plan, let me say I found around 100 statements, which includes Africanization, regionalization, colonization, decolonization, and internationalism, globalization. But around 70% of the statements directly related to globalization or a bit related to internationalization. Why I'm saying a bit? Because internationalization needs specific impacts or specific intervention on the university institutional capacity or teaching, learning, understanding. So the internationalization is weaker than globalization. When we look at the regionalization statements, I saw only 3 reference. African Vision, 2063, and East African Action or Agenda, 2050, and East African University Council's arrangements. So they only refer to those regulations. There is nothing about objectives, visions, goals, iterations about regionalization. There is only referring. We look at the aims, goals of these documents, so we prepare the strategic plan. And when we come to Africanization, I think almost nothing in strategic plan. I think Africa or Africanism only passed one time in whole strategic plan. It's maybe included in Pan-African University or Pan-African Agenda, nothing else. There is nothing about Africanization in this strategic plan. So my aim was to understand the balance between internationalization and Africanization at Makerere University, but at the end of my research, that was what surprised me, is nothing about Africanization in all strategic plan. So I try to understand how can I analyze or how can I understand this surprising result. Let me read from my presentation from my phone. I'm so sorry about this. Okay, let me. Yes. It's connected and open. Thank you. I have, I think, 7 results here. Also, it's Makerere University. This is an important side of my research. Makerere University, because cultural identity, history, must be the center of Africanism, because it is the oldest university And it includes every stage of history of African, actually, about the higher education, because it comes from early 19th. Makerere University holds a strong position as one of the leading institutions as both the national and regional levels. Its strategic focus, however, reflects a blend of approach: internationalization, regionalization, nationalization, Africanization, each with distinct challenges and gaps. Second one, in terms of Pan-Africanism, Makerere lacks a clear theoretical foundation or specific reference to African or East African policy documents. There are no explicit Pan-Africanist objectives or interventions, despite the institution's historical and symbolic role in promoting African identity. Makerere's internationalization efforts are driven by a willingness to align with global trends, enthusiastically embracing the opportunities of globalization. However, despite this enthusiasm, the university finds itself in a disadvantaged position in the international sphere. Its regional standing contrasts sharply with its global visibility. On the other hand, regionalization is more of a necessity than a choice, shaped by intergovernmental regulations and the need for stronger collaborations within East Africa. The regional focus provides some stability and development opportunities for Makerere, but it also limits the university's ability to fully engage with global trends. Nationalization remains a practical priority for Makerere. It must ensure access to higher education for a growing Ugandan students population, especially given the numerous socioeconomic challenges the country faces. This national focus is a pragmatic response to these demands, even if it limits Makerere's global reach. Lastly, Africanization is an essential but largely symbolic effort. While Makerere identifies itself with Africanizations and plays a central role in nurturing African identity across the continent, there is little tangible action or implementation to solidarity with this vision. In conclusion, Makerere University excels regionally and nationally, but faces significant challenges in internationalization. Its commitment to Africanization, though deeply rooted in its identity, remains largely aspirational without concrete step for realization. Actually, these are all my conclusions from my very limited research. Hope I will understand deeper this phenomena, and hope next year I will make it more powerful to share with you. Pamela Atekundra was my co-author, and she's at Makerere University. Thank you, Pamela, for your support for this research as well. And that's all for me today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. There you have it, colleagues. Oh, the presentation is now available.
I don't have a picture with it. Thank you.
Okay, we have about 10 to 15 minutes for a conversation. So I want to invite the floor for any kinds of thoughts, comments, and questions you might have for this wonderful presentation given to us by Ibrahim and Pamela. Okay, who can maybe take the mic there? Can you?
So thank you for the presentation. Now concerning the vision, making long-term visions and everything in that line, I really want to inquire from you whether you think our current environment of eclecticism, okay, I use the word eclecticism to imply there is an ideology here, and then there are constant paradigm shifts introduced by various ideologies. So do you think they have a role to play you make a vision today for 10 years later and 5 years in the way, you have already lost track. So in the context, of course, of Afrocentrism, so do you think it has a role to play? Because it relates to the keynote speaker today, what she said about, yes, she said about ideas gaining currency and ideas that have been, of course, popular, falling into nothingness. So I submit.
Thank you. Dear researcher, I hope you're listening to me. This is a very intriguing presentation. And it seems to be interesting that you're focusing on the strategic plan of Makerere, drawing conclusions which seem to be interesting as well. My question is, did you take time to observe, because many times we put in those strategic plans and do things differently. So based on your experience and the research that you've done, are you able to observe the things that are done in Makerere, whether they reflect any Africanism, any Afrocentrism, and anything in that relation?
Chairperson and the presenter, thank you very much. My question may not be directly related to the presentation, but I think this is the right place to raise it because we may discuss. In our school and in Uganda generally, when people are writing their PhD proposal or dissertation, they do a background. And a particular template says they start with the global and trickle down to the local. Unfortunately, or curiously, the global or the international means America, UK, Germany. And I have always fought with the ones put in my care why something here can never be seen as international. Why? Why does it have to start in Europe and not in Kenya? Are you able to speak to that? What is your experience? What is your view? Thank you.
All right, and then maybe the last one from me, then you can just respond to everyone. So Makerere University is inside a specific nation state, right? And this nation state has a market economy around it. There are capital flows in from different kinds of forces, Eastern forces, Western forces. They have capital flows inside this nation state. They have interests in this nation state, and obviously by extension, they also have interests in the type of direction that Makerere must also take. So in other words, the strategic plan of Makerere is not only going to be determined by the people in Makerere, but there are also forces outside who have an interest of what Makerere must do and what it must become in order for them to reinforce their own interests, you know? So I just want to check with you, when you're reading these strategic documents, what did you pick up from that type of force that has a significant impact on how things are framed in the university? Because it's not by accident that, like you're saying, that Africanization is disappearing from the documents, because these forces, they look at the East and the West as the world. So the East and the West, it's internationalization. And then Africa is indigenization. You know, things in Africa are indigenous, but things in the East and the West, you know, they're more global and blah, 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 blah. And I think you picked up, like you said, that in the documents of Makerere, that seems to be also coming out strongly. So what is your take on and your observation on how these things are framed in these documents that you came across? And how do you see these forces play out in terms of their capital flows to Makerere and the nation state and also the outflows? I think you can just address everything.
Just not taking my notes. But first of all, humbly, let me say, I'm not enough expert to answer all questions because I just started to understand what's happening around here. But simply, I can say the forces, outside forces, mostly comes related to financial needs. So whenever I see any relation between Makerere and other universities around the world, it's mostly related to financial issues. So this is the main topic what I see. So the highest administrators, because they have practical problems to pay salaries, to find some resources for students. So they need money, and government pays very few. So they need international relations to get more funds. So this is the most important source, what makes, what shapes the Makerere's internationalization. But other parts, Chinese, Indians, Europe's impacts, these are all need to be studied to analyze in detail. But in simply, I saw this. It's very important question why the world is Eurocentric and why when we talk about the Western, it's only, you know, the 10% of the population all over the world. 300 or 400 million in Europe and almost 300 and 400 million in Africa and North America, and other all countries follows them. It's a question which I cannot reply now. Need to study much more. Yes, I see people's vision in the campus. And when we talk with the people, the Africanist vision they have inside. And they are very sincere, very atheistic about making it stronger, greater for their people, for their governments, for their region, and in general for African continent. I witnessed it in person, so I am very happy to see that. But it's why not in strategic plan, not sure. But I will continue my research to understand what is the deepened mental schema about their understanding of Africanism. So I will hope reply this question easily. 5 years later or 10 years later, when I look at the Turkey, our experiences, every 10 years, we will be more globalized, we will be more internationalized than being more localized. Because we have, you know, a president at our country, he is almost 2 decades in the ruling party and ruling the government, the Turkey, and he's conservative, very religious guy, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And he's very keen on rising religious people in the country. But you know, after 2 decades, we have less religious people in our country because we are getting richer, but we are also living some traditional or religious ties. So it's, I think, reality of life, not only the Turkish or African experience. And the last questions, I think it's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim and Pamela. Well done, colleagues. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, colleagues, this brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much for being here. The time is now 1 o'clock. We may now break for lunch.